I'm Vin.
I'm Sori.
And I'm Tina.
Hello, Tina.
Tina is Tina's like an honorary reviewer. She's like done the most reviews.
Yep.
Tina Bonita, tell the people who you are, because it's been a couple thousand people since your last video.
Yep.
I can see.
The village needs to know who you are.
Okay, my name is Tina Banks. I live in Austin, Texas. I've been a follower since 452. And I always remember it because it was the Cradle of Filth, her Ghost in the Fog review. And I saw this thing, 2 Christians review, and I went, what the fuck? And I turned it on and watched it, and there's these people dressed in white. I'm thinking, if that girl looks any more serene, they should just give her the sainthood now. I should just call the police and say, give her the sainthood now. But it was like the start of a journey. I transgender. I am open about it. I live my life. I work as a professional cook. But in my past life, I'm quite comfortable telling you that I've done this. I used to write for magazines from time to time. I had a record label. And I've been around and seen stuff. And it's just great fun being here. I enjoy doing these with Vin and Sori. I do this because I think that Vin and I kind of have something in common intellectually, a little bit. Although he might disagree, he might want to distance himself from that. I'm just like, I love them both. Sori's been fantastic. To me in some ways, especially at this point in my transition. I often help with recipe ideas.
You did Thanksgiving.
Generally,
yeah.
Did we
I had an amazing turkey because of Tina.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, my time, I've had the chance to DJ a lot of metal underground shows in London back in the day. I saw some really good bands like Nile, Cradle of Filth, My Dying Bride, tons of bands. The list could go on forever. I won't bore you. So I've just luckily just sort of connected with these 2 people. They kind of made my faith curious again, but in a different way, because I do my own thing and they do their own thing. But it's kind of sparked something in me again, and it's helped bring back some of the joy to metal for me. And I like just bombarding the shit out of them with crazy songs to see what reaction I can get. So tonight, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of stick my neck out. My previous choices were songs I thought that Vin and Sori needed to hear in their journey into metal, and that might intellectually stimulate them and generate some good conversation. This one is just purely and simply my favorite black metal song. I'm not saying it's the best. I'm not saying it's the greatest, but it's the one I keep coming back to the most.
Oh.
And we've talked about sound in black metal and artistic interpretation. This, for me, is what my soul really likes. This is the artistic, this is black metal art. This band called ABORYM. It's the opening track from their critically acclaimed second album called Fire Walk With Us, that was released originally on Scarlet Records, I believe, in Italy. It was one of the very few albums ever to get a maximum 10 out of 10 in Terrorizer magazine, and it has been described by one reviewer as for black metal fans with a brain.
Really?
So yeah, this is kind of like, I don't think you will have ever heard. I mean, I know you've started to pick up a lot in your black metal and your underground and different sounds, but I don't know if you've ever heard anything quite like this. This is industrial black metal, or what was called postmodern black metal. The band are from Italy, but the vocalist you know already. And boy, do we have a story for you, this vocalist. This vocalist was vocalist for Mayhem.
Really?
No shit.
Yeah, his name's Attila Cesar. I don't know if I'm pronouncing Hungarian correctly, or if it's Attila Chihar. But I had the chance. I did a review 2003 called With No Human Intervention. And I had the chance to interview him because it was 25 years as like basically, the guy's a legend in black metal underground. And not just in that, but also in electro underground and industrial. And has worked with some fairly big names like Harbo, Sun O, like his drones band. His style of vocal is like in the throat, like the Tibetan throat warblers. It's very much like that. This, for me, is like some of his best work, I feel, that I like the most. And this is just such a good track.
Okay. So this is ABORYM or ABORYM. And the name of do we do headphones with this one? Oh, we don't. That's right. Okay, so this is ABORYM Our Sentence. And this is the first song on the track, Fire Walk With Us. So it should be interesting.
Okay, hold off till we get it started. How do we get to
do screen share?
There's nothing to share. It wasn't a lyric video. But there's no point. I was thinking we'll just start it and then go back to that screen.
Okay.
Yeah, see, there's no.
Okay.
So I'm just going to click starting it, and then I'm going to just move it to that.
Yep.
But the whole time it's still just showing the two of us because we're not screen sharing.
Right.
Okay.
The three of us.
Well, I meant the two screens. Okay, ready?
Go.
Go. screaming?
It's black.
Yeah,
I'm sure they were screaming.
but no, where that ends, that's where the next song begins.
Okay.
That thing
The next song on the album is called "Love the Death as the Life."
Okay.
Yeah. And then it's Fire Walk with Us.
That was a very unique beat at the end there. And it sounded like it was like a jungle in the background too.
See, I like epic stuff like that. But I feel like, so if I would have heard that section in like a power metal song, I'd have been like, oh, that's pretentious bullshit. But when I hear it in black metal, I'm like, yes.
What, really?
Yeah.
It's the sound, it's that tone.
Yeah. But like the atmosphere, I think the atmosphere that's created by black metal to me is just a lot more serious and carries more gravity.
Oh, yeah.
So that when you go to those types of like really epic, almost like operatic heights, it makes sense because you're dealing with serious subject matter. Whereas with power metal, it's kind of like, and, you know.
Okay,
like,
yeah, I can see what you're saying.
I'm like, I don't know. So I love that part right there. Like that's the stuff that like stays with me. Like that's one of the things about black metals. There's always like some segment of the music that stays with me. Like that's why I like Magua, like that exercises and futility. Like that whole thing stays with me the entire time. Anyway, I'm rambling as usual. Go ahead.
That's all right. That's what people think.
So why is
no, it's just something about that sound and that vibe. It kind of makes my soul like feel like flying, like it's flying, you know, soaring.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And it's just the intensity of using a drum machine to get sound, and just that really, really fast picking. It just almost creates a really sort of hard punch.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of like the way it does.
Do you play any
instruments? No, I don't play any instruments. No.
Why? Why'd you ask that?
I was just curious. Like, I just figured you probably did play something, and so I was curious.
No, I'm one of those people that's not gifted musically and to make music, but I'm gifted at like knowing, in my opinion, what sounds good.
Yep. And
I can back that up with some sales. I've done okay out of it.
I definitely heard the industrial aspect with the like the kind of space.
Yeah. One of the things this band was if you look them up in this particular time period, this for many fans was their golden era. You know, it was 2 albums.
The golden era of this band.
Yes. This band came out of a place called Taranto in Italy, and originally started in 1993 up there, but the band, I think, kind of fell apart, and then the original members relocated to Rome. And then that's when they hooked up with Attila. Now, when Attila came on the scene, I got a chance to interview him, and he was saying that he had just got clean and went to Rome and was working with these guys, and he was their new vocalist because he'd done some guest vocals on their first album. Their first album's called Kali Yuga Bazaar, with a different vocalist, and they have sort of been, there's so many different terms to label them. Even their corpse paint and everything was very different. By the time they get to this album, and then especially on the following album with No Human Intervention, like their upside down crosses are like infrared and ultraviolet. You know, it's a whole different kind of look.
Wow. Yeah, I'm looking up that aesthetic right now because that would be pretty badass to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, some people describe them as alien vampire metal. A cosmic, black metal. You know, viewing the cosmos. You know, things like black holes and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, alien, black, hard industrial.
Yep.
Is how they're self-described.
Why over here does it say?
Yeah, but see, the band is still going, but they're not the same band anymore.
Oh, okay.
In fact, I can't be 100% sure because didn't have enough time to look it up. But one of Emperor's old members, but I can't pronounce his last name, but he was became their drummer. I think he was one of Emperor's bassists for a while when their early days when they had so many floating members. So he went and joined with the band after Attila left and a couple of the other original members left, and it was just the one original, the bassist. And he's done some vocals from other bands and in Italy in different styles, that kind of vocals, different styles. There's a band called Void of Silence, and he did the vocals on their album called Criteria of 666. But what made this album particularly unique to a lot of black metal fans is their cover. They did a Burzum cover. I think it's called
Oh, really?
Dom Gang Set Sar, I believe it's called. I can't remember off the top of my head right now. But they did a cover version of that on that particular album, Fire Walk With Us. And from what I understand, the title track itself, believe it or not, I don't know how true it is, but what it says on the internet, because that's all I can do really, and ask a few people, it's based on the TV show Twin Peaks.
No shit.
Yeah. But I mean, that track is like ultra fucked up. It's the very dark art. It's that dark sound. But what I like about this first one is it kind of has an uplifting tone to it, especially when you read the lyrics.
Yeah.
On face value, before you hear the music, when you just read the lyrics, and I think they're sort of written in this very primitive way. If I remember rightly, when the first pressing of this album came out, it didn't have any lyrics in it, and there was some urban legends going around that the lyrics to some of the songs on this album were very specific to specific people.
Well, that could be dangerous.
I don't know, but I don't know. I can't sort of verify that for sure, but you know how urban legends start.
Yeah.
But they're a great band. They really captured my imagination because, a lot of black metal, it kind of sounds the same.
Yeah.
There is some elements, especially you have bands that are fans, have started black metal bands because they're fans of other bands, and they kind of like all kind of fit a certain, genre and sound. This is just so different.
Yeah, it's one of the hardest things, I talk about it all the time. Like, one of the hardest things to do when you play an instrument is to come up with something original. Because most of us bought an instrument because we were inspired by our favorite band. Mm-hmm. Well, then if that's the case, then you're going to sound like them.
Right.
So.
But see, this is considered, I guess because I haven't sort of followed much lately, but this is considered old school. But it was very cutting for its time, almost avant-garde. I mean, the next album is a quantum leap forward when the whole album sounds much more industrial.
Yeah, I really liked, especially the second half of the song when that like, I love that shit. What did you think the song was about?
Life.
So, like, you say, like, this is your go-to song. Like, how would you summarize this song in like 2
minutes? I don't have a go-to song.
Right.
I have multiple go-to songs in different genres of music for different how I'm feeling, which I think pretty much everybody. Yeah. This something about this song that I really like, that in the sound and that tone, when that whole beat, and then you add Attila's voice. I mean, the guy is a legend. The expression in his sounds is like very, very few black metal vocalists. Even the good ones.
What were you thinking?
I wasn't really a fan of the sound of the vocals.
I figured you wouldn't like the vocals.
No.
How come? Because you couldn't decipher what he was saying?
Well, I mean, that was part of it. Like, there was only like one piece that I'm like, okay, I know what he's saying on that part. But most of it I couldn't decipher.
It's one of the songs that just takes a while. It's one of those songs that sometimes, it just gets better and better and better. And I remember when I first bought this album and I played it and I thought, yeah, this is really, really, really good. And then when I got home, it was out of traffic and off the tube in London, what have you, and stuck it on my headphones and just whacked up the volume, it just suddenly hit me. And there's something about this, you know, you just listen to it and you just get it, and it takes you to another level.
Yeah.
I can get lost in this song.
He said, so what's the overarching message of the song for you when you say that you get lost in the song? What
I get lost in the sounds and the rhythms.
Yeah.
You know, I think for me, let's stick with go line by line, because I'd be interested to see what you think. For me, the opening sentence is a definite reference to like eschewing Christianity, with the cross being the blood symbol.
Right. I kill, leading us over in pray. Some of this is like, this is not their first language, right? English not being their first language.
No, but I also think it's done this way deliberately.
Deliberately on purpose. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So blood symbol I kill, which would be the
cross.
You know, the cross. You're eschewing Christianity, leading us over in pray God. How do you take that?
I don't know. I just follow it. I have no answer to that one. I think the one line that really resonates with me is sacred duality, especially with my transition.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know? And then, like, because when you listen to it in that part of that song, in that movement, everything is very sort of like freedom, escape, uplifting, flying, free. You know, it has that kind of feel to it. You know, I mean, when he does that laugh, it's like, finally, to him, religion and everything that religion stands for is like constraints on freedom, to live, experience, to understand.
And then he goes to, I try everything, I find everything, I have everything. So like once he's been able to free himself from what he considers to be constraints, and he tries everything, he finds everything, he has everything. Like that's, yeah. What is the sacred duality in this song?
Well, I don't know the meanings to the lyrics exactly. I really don't. This is just my interpretation, okay, just to be sure. I think it, like, you don't have the yin and the yang.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the expression that there is good, and not just good and bad, but give and take, up and down. You know, everything has an equal opposite. Mm-hmm. You know, and somewhere in the middle, it all kind of meets.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because later on he goes on to say, so he says, I try everything, I find everything, I have everything. Mm-hmm. And then if you go 2 stanzas down, he says, I like everything, I leave everything. Because nothing is kind of like,
maybe that life is transitory.
Yeah.
That physical life is transitory.
Yeah. But to me, like, this is
a higher purpose.
What'd you say?
Seeking a higher purpose.
Well, yeah, that's what I got from it, was that, okay, let's say that
I leave everything is seeking the higher purpose.
Well, it's like, okay, you say, okay, all these constraints are gone, so like go forth, the universe is your oyster, right? Mm-hmm. So you could have everything that you wanted, try everything, find everything, have everything.
Yep.
Right? And then it's like, okay, well, what did you find out? He's like, well, I like everything, and then I leave everything because he's looking for something else. Is how I took it.
Yeah.
And so it's like, go ahead.
I think what really, like, if you take it at face value at that, but then you have to add into the music the deliberately placed samples of "The Beast Shall Overcome."
Right.
And that kind of flips the message a little bit.
How did you take that?
Well, on the surmise that Christianity specifically, just because it's just the easiest and like everyone goes for that kind of. You hear a lot of you can't do, mustn't do, can't have, mustn't have, don't do, mustn't have, you know, do this, do that. You hear a lot of that. Whereas for them, it's the freedom to not be, you know, waste your life or your time under a false god, waste your purpose. You know, it's like freedom to do what you want.
So the beast overcoming in that context for you is was it like your inner animalistic nature that's being held?
No, I don't relate to the song necessarily as a whole song. in terms of emotional or this or that. Other than that, I think he's sort of making a statement, you know, and for him, it's like getting rid of. We have to look at what is the name of this band is based on. It's kind of you know, it makes you question.
Yeah, it says the name of the band derives from ABORYM Our, overseer of the 26 legions of hell in the 17th century.
Oh my gosh.
He's the overseer of 26 legions of hell.
Isn't that also supposed to be about a 17th century grimoire that contains 15th century demon incantations? I think it said.
Yep, that's the one. That's the one. Yeah, I of course the concept of course we're Christians, audience. The concept of Christianity being sort of a restrictive religion is very interesting if you actually think about what Paul was doing in the first century, because Paul, he actually, so there were a group of ascetics in the church in the first century, and they had these extremely sort of restrictive, rigid ideas about being closer to God.
Yeah.
And so so watch this. So if with Christ, this is Colossians 2. If with Christ you died to the elemental spirits of the world, why, as if you were still alive in the world, do you submit to its regulations? Do not handle, do not taste, do not touch. And so Paul is going after these ascetics who are putting all these restrictions on the religion. He's saying, why are you submitting to these regulations? Don't touch this, don't handle this, don't taste this. And he says, these have indeed an appearance of wisdom in promoting self-made religion and asceticism and severity to the body, but they are of no value in stopping the indulgence of the flesh. And so Paul is saying, when you have these religions that are hyper restrictive, then it looks on the outside that you're like a super religious, disciplined person, but it doesn't change anything about who you are on the inside.
Right.
And so sometimes when I hear people say, I rejected Christianity because it was really restrictive, I'm not talking about you, or I'm not even talking about this guy. I'm just talking about our experience. When people say, I reject Christianity because it's too restrictive, sometimes when I sit and probe and I say, well, what are you talking about? They're talking about stuff like this,
right?
Where, because religious people do have that bent where the more you restrict from yourself and the more freedom you deny yourself, the holier you are, or whatever, because it's about appearance. And a lot of times
people, they have those restrictions on themselves, but then they put them on other people too.
Put them on, it's called legalism is the technical term. But a lot of times I've told people, well, you rejected that because you for your own mental health. Right. Like that's not something God put on anybody, but because you have religious people claiming to be the representatives of God and then creating this really strict and restrictive interpretation of religion, that's a lot of people have to leave that behind for their own mental health. But I'm not particularly certain that they're leaving God.
Right.
And I think that to me, I think God can make the distinction between a person leaving him and a person leaving, restrictive, crazy religion.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Because I don't believe let me see if you agree with this, Tina. I don't believe anybody believes that we should have absolute and complete total freedom to do whatever the hell we want to do.
Do I believe that?
Yeah.
I believe we've been given that. I believe it's a gift.
Like if I woke up one day and said, I want to rob like 50 banks and kill 50 people. Like, well, you wouldn't say, yeah, Vin, go for it. Or would you try to convince me not to do it?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure that I'm qualified to answer that in the sense that I would probably say, don't forget my cut, my 25%. No. No, look, I think, they say perception is reality, right?
Right.
Everyone's perceptions is different. Everyone's perception of creativity and life it's different for a reason, I think, because it creates a tapestry that this whole thing that is life, that is the glory of God, if you want to describe it that way. And I think what gets very hard is trying to impose moral will and judgment that's yours onto others, right? I think that, and now it's not saying that you shouldn't necessarily try or stuff like that, but I think what really upsets a lot of people is that religion always comes across as negative unless you actively seek it out. And I think one of the reasons why it comes across negatively is because the people that are supposed to be running it on God's behalf, right, are often are just as bad as the rest of us, if not worse, if not downright worse.
Oh, for
right?
sure.
And that, I think people, as people become educated about the world and the world around them, they obviously develop these views. And I think human evolution being what it is, because it's its own force of nature, I think eventually there may come a time where I don't think we'll necessarily evolve out of religion, but I think we'll evolve out of the oppression of religion. Right? I think people should just be able to feel free to worship God how they want, the way they want, in whatever venue or whatever format they want and believe. And, you know, that should be it. You know, I don't think there should be any other way. Just because you believe in God in a different way doesn't make you less any valid. Right? What's scary is those that are of a certain persuasion that feel that only their point of view matters and now want to make everybody else like their point of view. And that's not how we were created.
Well, yeah, that's when it becomes extremely dangerous, especially when you go from the point of persuasion to the point of compulsion. Those are two different things.
I don't know. Life is so kind of like fucked up in the sense that you go out there as people of faith to try and help and save. And from there it becomes preaching. And I think often like you try and change the situation because you want to and you love them and you want to do right by God. But often I think just sometimes it's just you have to be there. You're there for them to take their pain out on, like let loose and you know, be somewhere. God put you there for a reason. You know, not necessarily to try and persuade them from a religious point of view or religious argument, just to be there, to be comfort, to be love.
Right.
You know, who's going to be there when you hurt? You know, and to have somebody there, I think it's mostly what, you know, the kindness and compassion of it's all about.
What were you going to say?
I think that, like, this is kind of going back to the thing you guys were talking about a minute ago. I think that we should let the God decide how he wants to be worshipped. You know what I mean? Like,
that's a good point.
Instead of people trying to say, oh, well, you should worship God in this way, or this is how you should relate to God, or people saying, I want to relate to God in this way, and that's how I'm going to relate to God. Like, if somebody believes in a God, then I would think that a lot of gods determine how they want to be worshipped. Like when you think about, well, we would call them false gods, the, you know, multiple other gods besides the God that we worship, but like a lot of them had specifics of how they wanted their worship to go and what they wanted their people to do to worship them. And the God of the Bible is no different, like in that sense. Like he has ways, but I think that other people want to put like all these rules and stuff on people and say, oh, you should worship God this way. Well, God says how he wants to be worshipped, and we're
yeah, and I kind of look at it in terms of like a relationship. It's kind of like, you know, I can't go to you and just say, all right, well, this is how I want to relate to you, as if you're not a part of the discussion.
Well, yeah.
It's like, hello.
Well, we were talking about that the other day, where I was saying, like, this is how things have to go for me to feel like loved. And then like we had that discussion, and then like we've been able to like maneuver things in a different ways. That way we can have a stronger relationship and a stronger bond. Like whatever, you know, I want to be able to speak to you in ways that you understand, and you want to speak to me in ways that I understand, so we can communicate and get a stronger bond. So
right, but if you look at God or religion or whatever people want to call it as, you know, a list of rules to follow and like who has the best rules, and no, my rules are better, my rules are better, instead of, okay, well, what if you were relating to an actual person, and that person had an opinion about how to engage it? Then you'd have to listen to what they say. You can't just make up what you want to do if you're having a serious relationship.
You know what's another thing too is, you know, like one of our kids, like I'm trying to teach them, you know, certain ways to like clean their room and certain ways to clean areas. And like, I have a certain,
guess which one it is.
I have a certain standard for the level of cleanliness that I'm looking for, that I'm going to say, now that's a damn good job. Well, I don't curse when I talk to them, but like one of them is like misunderstanding and saying, oh, your standards are too high and I'm never going to meet them anyway, so I might as well just give up. Rather than realizing that it's not, I'm not placing a bunch of rules on you just to make your life miserable, but I'm trying to mature you and get you to a certain standard. And so I think that that's another thing too, is I think that like, because he misunderstands what I'm trying to do, he doesn't understand that me training him and teaching him is a relationship thing. He just sees it as, oh, you're just trying to set all these rules for me that makes my life hard. And, you know, because he doesn't see the future, you know, he doesn't know that when you have a job, if your boss asks you to sweep that room, he expects you to get the corners.
Oh, yeah. I mean, isn't rebellion a part of life?
It's definitely a part of the human existence. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that it's in our nature to rebel until we settle down and grow up.
And I kind of felt like that, like, I don't know. I don't know who it is. Is it the Amish people? Like when you hit like 17 or something, they send the kids out to do whatever the hell they want to do.
I always forget if it's the
and
Amish
if the kid comes back, then fine.
Yeah.
Right. But they
did. So that's kind of like they used to have, didn't they? Used to have those kind of rituals where it was legally kosher or legally allowed to go nuts and just commit. You know, like it's almost like a purging.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
you know,
and it's like, okay, if you get that out of your system and you decide you want to come back and be Amish, then fine. But it was sort of the idea of you've been sheltered your entire life, and now we're going to send you out into the world, quote unquote. And then if you come back, then you would be legit. You know, you got a taste of everything, and you're like, no, I want to go back to, you know, milking the cows or whatever. No disrespect to Amish people. But I kind of felt like there's some of that on this when he was talking about trying everything, finding everything, having everything. Like
I think that this is also can be seen as a celebration of life. You know, everything. Look, you know, if you want some sort of Christian reference, how about the one, I don't know the name of the book of the Bible, to be honest with you right now, but the one where God shows Peter that all the animals, he said, kill, Peter, eat.
Right.
You know, and it's a kind of that kind of theme in the sense that I think that we have been given this like world to enjoy and make the most of and experience. And it doesn't mean necessarily raping and ruining the land and what have you and making animals extinct. But like we talked once at a fireside about, you know, that our purpose is to, you know, give glory to God. And it kind of, when you say it that way, it kind of sounds like, you know, that you have no future. All you got is to do is to give glory to God, and God doesn't want, you know, anything else but to give glory to God and not have a life. But
that's half what I said.
I think half, you know, also, I think, in fact, if anything, the opposite is true. You know, you get kicked out in the world and say, get on with it. But I think, as I say, do with anyone. But I think that for me, in the context of this song, I think it's talking about free will, exercising of what you've been given to do what you will, you know, which can be tied back to do as they. I can't remember the exact wording, but do as thou shalt will, or something like that in the Satanic Bible.
Harm none, or something like that.
Yeah, but I mean, it's what I like about this is that a lot of black metal, and especially a lot of black metal imagery, kind of goes back to past times and times that have, you know, are gone, And, you know, and you see that in movies, you know, but what I like about this gives it a sort of modern, almost cosmic feel of a greater, vaster, uncaring universe. And, you know, the universe is the universe and will do what it will do. And it's up to us to make the most of it and get the most out of life and not be bound by guilt, not be bound by oppression, and to experience life. And I think whoever wrote this is trying to express that connotation. And that's kind of what I like about it, because
well, you see the futuristic stuff when he talks about traveling on the cosmic wheel, things like, and then when he was talking about that,
Native Americans talk about the cosmic wheel in their religions too.
Yeah.
You know, see,
heard the synth going over and the futuristic sounds and all
that. They specialize apparently in trying to cram as many industrial sounds into their songs, and they don't just do. There is actually a couple of pure industrial tracks. There's one called "Here Is No God." That's just pure industrial. But the last track on the album is called Theta Paranoia, where it's just like this theta waves, and they're trying to induce paranoia in their listeners.
Oh man,
it's like really dark. It's dark art. You know, it's musical. For me, this is musical expression pushed to a degree that is not necessarily for everybody, not necessarily, you know, like these sort of things cause arguments and bar fights and internet trolls and stuff like that, you know, but I'm not saying it's the greatest black metal song ever written or anything like that. It's just my favorite song in terms of the sound that it creates. And I liked the cosmic aspect of this band.
Well, there is about eternal current in the moment.
Yeah.
See, I think that what speaks to me about that is life. It's like life is happening. Life is constant. It's all around. It's always bursting forth, always happening in the moment. You know, and I can very much identify with that. You know, life is always happening.
What were you getting from that one?
Well, it seems to me like when I'm looking at the lyrics, it sounds like someone who is kind of looking for peace in like that, you know, like that moment where like you'll see it expressed in like different things where it's kind of like you find your center and like, you know, like because it was talking about the duality up here,
sacred duality, right
sacred duality and stuff. But then it's like I try everything, I find everything, I have everything. Like I feel like it's somebody trying to find like their center and feeling like that completeness. And when it said eternal current in the moment, all time, I don't know what all the time have what create. Speak to all, like I feel like it's just like that centering feeling that the person's looking for.
I think the universe. I think it's what you're saying. The universe is speaking to us all now. I mean, you look at, we're all connected. Our physical beings all come from the same matter that made stars.
Right.
I'm thinking that when it says like the beast, like it was, what is it saying? The beast will overcome.
Yeah, it's the beast will overcome.
Like with that, I was just like, maybe
throws like that whole, like, you know, almost like a philosophical satanic element into pursuing success.
Well, what's interesting is,
wait, let me finish. I think that there's like an understanding that there's something that could center us, and a lot of people figure that must be something related to spirituality. And so it seems to me like this band is just saying, well, they already did away with the cross at the beginning, and they're saying the beast will overcome. So it seems like they're deciding, okay, well, that oneness, that completeness is going to come through the opposite of the cross, the opposite of that direction. And that the person or the band or whatever is just looking for that kind of.
Apparently, there is something that kind of touches on that. I was watching, there's a program called Civilizations, and they did one about how religion played its role in the development of civilizations. And they were saying in the back of the human brain, when you pray, you kind of lose your self-identity and connect. It's when you connect to the universe or God or whatever you want to call it. And like when people pray together, everyone sort of, it connects that way. and they did this test on these Sufi Muslims, and they were doing their swirl dancing, that thing when they kneel on the ground and they move rhythmically and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they put heart monitors on some of them, and the faster it got, the more attuned their heart rates became.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There's something. Look, you see, the thing is, there's truth in everything, right? And I don't think, when it comes to God, whatever, Jesus, whatever, I don't think the truth of everything has come out yet. I think over time, we have been misled by people who have had their own purposes and their own perspective on what they think God should be put upon us. And I think it's caused some problems. I don't think the whole truth of everything has come out yet, but there is something to the power of prayer that there is something, because it does, even if you don't necessarily believe in it, you want to say scientifically it's a placebo, but it does some good that's not physical.
Right. Right. Well,
and it can.
A conundrum that you would have as a naturalist, I'm not saying that you're a strict naturalist, is that we know that the metaphysical world exists, in that we know that laws of logic exist, and they have no extension in time or space. Mm-hmm. So we know that the metaphysical world exists. The problem is that world isn't governed by the laws of the physical universe. So it creates a conundrum. But what's interesting is he says eternal current, leave the moment, right? And then in the very last stanza, he says eternal current in the moment. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was super significant, because here, it's in the midst of trying everything, finding everything, having everything. He's in the midst of this giant exploration and freedom or whatnot. And then he talks about being caught up in the eternal current, but then leaving the moment. Mm-hmm. But then toward the end of the song, at the very end of the song, he actually says eternal current in the moment. And I think that's a major, major, major life lesson, because when you're young, I want to get out of this town, or I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to have this goal, or whatever. But then as you mature, you start to realize how fleeting life is. Mm-hmm. And then there becomes this value on finding the significance of the moment itself. Mm-hmm. And not trying to go away from, not trying to get somewhere, but to experience the moment. Because like Tina said earlier, the past, it's done. Yeah. There's nothing you can do about it. And the future doesn't really exist. Yeah. But this moment is what you have, and be in the moment, while at the same time knowing that you're caught up in an eternal current. Yeah. I think that's a major, major, major thought process.
Also that life is perpetual.
Right. Because you're in the eternal current. Mm-hmm. Right.
Let's look at it this way. If you give you another Christian perspective, the Bible says, God created the earth in 7 days. Who says 7 days in heaven is the same as 7 days on earth?
Right.
Right. So because there is no corporeal time in the spirit world, right? Or the world beyond the physical, right? Mm-hmm. So, and again, another clue in the Bible where it says 1,000 years is as 1 day. You have to be very careful. 1,000 years is as 1 day. They're the same. There's no difference in the spirit world, right? And I think Christians, again, have got themselves caught up with this, especially with this 6,000 years. And I think they're ignoring the reality of science, and what we know and understand about our universe.
I had a conversation with someone. I'm like, what's the big thing about the 6,000 years, man? Did you hear that growing up, that the world was 6,000 years old?
No, I heard that as a crazy theory, but that it wasn't.
No, there's actual evangelical Christians that are pursuing that, and it's like you talked about it with, especially with you talked about it with Thy Art Is Murder, about people who believe that. That viewed that, especially like Sarah Palin, that the earth is 6,000 years old. We can basically do what we want to it because the end times is coming anyway. And I think they're horribly wrong. That's my opinion.
So here's my last comment on the song, and about the concept of kind of indulgence, trying everything.
Mhm.
So somebody asked me what the purpose of life is from a Christian worldview, and Tina rightly quoted half of it. The first half was to glorify God,
Mhm.
but the second half, this is actually the Westminster Confession. You know the second half,
And enjoy him forever.
right? To glorify God and enjoy Him forever. That's the meaning of life. And so then it's like, okay, well, what does it mean to glorify God or enjoy Him forever? I think for me, one leads necessarily to the other. Meaning, if I were to say, when you say Attila is a legend, right? Like the singer, you're glorifying Attila, you're bringing him glory, you're saying he's a legend. But the only reason that he's a legend is because so many people enjoy his work. So when you enjoy something, the next logical thing that you do is you sing the praises of whatever you enjoy. So if I enjoy KFC, if I enjoy chicken, if I enjoy Pepsi, if I enjoy Red Bull, I'm going to glorify it because I want to express to everybody around me how much I enjoy. So this is why Paul was not a fan of all this aesthetic, don't do this, don't do that, don't have sex. Paul actually said people that were saying that were demonized. Don't get married and have sex. He was like, that's some demonic shit. So,
Amen.
See, this go on. Sorry, you go ahead.
So my point is, if your enjoyment of something results in your glorification of something, and then if God gave us everything to experience, then what it means to glorify God and enjoy Him forever is to let loose on the universe, experience everything we possibly can, and then go back to God and thanks for, thank you for this star system, whatever the hell we're going to be doing,
I also think that this song also touches on the universe or great and terrifying things that are also inspiring and capture our own imagination and make us think and try and push further and harder as a species.
Well, he says that question of space and time. And it's those questions that, to your point, Tina, the questions that we've always been asking is what makes us explorers and makes us want to go to the moon. Sorry. Do you still not think we went to the moon?
I'm not starting that discussion now.
Anyway,
Sori's going, that's no big accomplishment because that going to the moon is like just going down the street.
Right. It's only like 5 miles away or whatever. Long more. All right. What do you give the song, Tina?
For me, this is 9.5, 10, 9.5, 10, something around about that mark. I just love this song, the way it makes me feel. This is a dark and almost symphonic industrial sound, and I absolutely love this song.
What about you? Be honest.
It's a 7 for me.
Okay, no, that's acceptable.
Stock for a while. This is actually, oddly enough, I think, aside from Magua, I don't really have a lot of black metal shower songs.
This is a black metal shower.
This is definitely a shower song for sure.
Tina.
And a lot of it has to do with, that second half of the song was just crazy. Plus, they had a lot of like just classical kind of like thrash metal-y type of riffs. It didn't stay that way because they wanted to keep it black metal. But there's a lot going on in that 6 minutes and 42 seconds, whatever it was.
Yeah, it builds on the intensity before that sort of release in that final part of the song. Yeah.
So this is a solid 9 for me. I really, really like this song. But it's anytime when they start with the tremolo picking and it gets melodic, I'm just a sucker for that. I love it. I'll probably always love that style. But actually talking more and more about the lyrics now, the song, because English isn't their first language, you actually have more room to add your own interpretation
of the lyrics. Yeah.
Maybe this is why I think it's deliberate, because good art should inspire different things.
Yeah, and I actually like what you said, where you were like, you weren't necessarily relating to the whole song all the time. There were pieces of the song or pieces of the lyrics that became super important to you depending on where you're at. So I legitimately like this band. This is good. This is good, Tina Benina.
Thank you.
Coming through in the clutch. Listen to some more ABORYM. Out.
Sori out.
Tina out.
Gone.
Gone.